Good morning, everybody. We're going to try to get started. Jim's got a microphone. We may have some comments or conversations as this goes on. Jim's going to help out if there's any feedback from the audience. We're going to be the Disruptors Part 2 presentation, which is going to cover AI both in the claims world and in the attorney world. Lars is going to talk to us about some of the things that China is doing and, to scare us all about what's going on. Just a real quick introduction because we're going to try to catch up. I'm Joe Duncan. With Clark May Price in Birmingham. I'm the Themis attorney in Alabama.
Steve Locust with the Hartford. I run the construction department for Navigators Insurance.
Lars Daniel, I'm the practice leader of digital forensics at Invista Forensics. Run a team of experts with over 400 combined expert testimonies and everything from computer to cell phone location, cryptocurrency, and you name it. And now with that, we're going to get started because we have some fun content to show. I'm going to spend about the first 15 minutes introducing the topic, then we're going to open it up to a panel discussion that these gentlemen here will be leading. But I like to talk about this topic when we're thinking about disruptions and what's coming. We can look at where it's already happened. And that's what we're going to do today, in part by looking at the Chinese social credit system. Now what we have today is we have massive data collection. We have data collected of your biometric data, your location data, your online data. All of that has the ability to not only be collected but stored because of modern technological developments, both in internet speeds and the ability to store massive amounts of information, right? We'll couple that massive amount of data. It's absolutely mind-boggling amounts of data with artificial intelligence. Now we have the ability to apply machine learning and algorithms to make decisions based upon that data. Data that is unprecedented in scope and size, but now we also have the ability for machines to make decisions independently from humans. So it's a pretty interesting world that we live in with all these developments that we're kind of having to face that are both going to be excellent for humanity in some ways and pose significant challenges. So let's look at this and how it's utilized in China to see perhaps a bit of a dystopian reality, but also just the power of this data. Well, social credit systems like the one in China utilize multiple different inputs to create a score that determines your value as a human. What your score is, like your credit score for money, this isn't about just your ability to handle finances though, this is your entire life. So we'll use inputs like, do you pay your taxes and bills? Do you have any court judgments? Do you adhere to traffic rules? Do you not criticize the government? Things like that, as well as your online activities. All that information that are gathered by private companies that are then provided to the government, as well as the government's own collection to create a profile about you, okay? So all of that information. Now, in addition to that, there are significant consequences if you do not follow the rules. What you're going to see here are two different slides while I talk over them. On the left, you have being publicly shamed in a crosswalk for walking inappropriately, and on the right, these are debtors. Debtors who have not paid their bills, and on the side of a truck, as it rides around, you are publicly named as a bad citizen. So having a low credit score in China will prevent you from being able to fly, get on trains. It will prevent you from getting to the best schools, jobs, hotels, you name it. You will get your pets taken away. You will be publicly named as a bad citizen you see here. And even if you have excellent ability to handle money, if you have more money you know what to do with, you still will be unable to potentially use it or receive financial assistance because your score is too low from hanging out with people like the ones we have here at Themis, No. How are they able to do this? Well, we have all that data collection we're talking about, but they also have Skynet. Yes, Skynet is what they actually named it. That was implemented in 2005 in China. Secretly initially, a mass surveillance system that now has grown from 20 million in 2013 when they let the country know about it to over 700 million cameras today and growing. That's just an estimate. I bet it's even more than that. And these are real-time facial recognition capable cameras, okay? So think about this. How do you sell that to the public? You sell that by we're gonna stop the bad guys, right? We're gonna keep crimes from even happening, like Minority Report style ability to do that. That's where this originally starts, but it ends up with the ability to track everyone, right? Because in order to have something that can do that, you need to know everything about everyone in just about all times, all right? So it's estimated there's about one camera for every 2 citizens in major metropolitan areas in China, and they can identify just about everybody. And we've seen this even in dog years, this is in technology years, this is very old, right? In 2017, a British journalist provided just his photograph and a rough date range when he would be in an area, a major city in China. They found him in 7 minutes and he was surrounded by the police, okay? Now that technology has advanced so far since then, it's hard to describe it in any kind of short period of time, so I'm gonna skip that, but just understand, we have that, but we also have coming voice recognition, iris recognition, and DNA sequencing that's happening in China across the country. This is about a 3-minute clip I'm going to show you, but I think it's worthwhile to spend that time here so we can really get the idea of what's happening. This is a New York Times report on this exact issue.
The government is actively collecting voice prints, iris scans, and DNA samples from its people, and maintains that the primary use of this material is to track criminals. Chinese media often promote these efforts, but the documents repeatedly show that police are gathering troves of material from everyday citizens too. Like in the city of Zhongshan, here a document reveals that police are adding devices to record audio from at least a 300-foot radius around their street cameras. The document outlines their plan to use voice recognition software to analyze the audio and add people's voice prints to a database. The police hope that combining voice recognition systems with facial recognition cameras will help them identify targets faster. But since your voice, much like your appearance, alters over time, our investigation shows Chinese authorities are starting to collect personal identifiers that are less likely to change over time, such as iris patterns. One document reveals that in Xinjiang, where millions of Uyghurs live, a government contractor built a database that can hold iris samples of up to 30 million people, enough to cover Xinjiang's entire population. We discovered this same contractor is now building large iris databases across the rest of the country. Documents show that the Chinese government is collecting another type of sensitive biometric data from broad segments of the population: DNA from men. Authorities can use genetic tracing to catalog entire generations of men, so a database built today will be useful far into the future. China says it uses these genetic databases to solve crimes. Criminal investigations around the world also rely on genetic information for this same reason. Y chromosome DNA is passed down from father to son. Given a genetic sample from an unknown male suspect, investigators can compare the man's Y DNA to samples already present in their databases. A match indicates a relationship along paternal lines and helps pinpoint the suspect's family history and geographic ancestry. Because of privacy concerns, many countries limit DNA collection to just criminals and suspects. But our analysis shows China stands out in its ambition to build ever larger databases of male DNA. We identified the earliest effort in Henan province in 2014. Today, male DNA databases exist in at least 25 out of mainland China's 31 provinces and regions. The logic behind this ever-expanding campaign is clear. A bidding document from Gansu province points out that as populations and family lineages grow, so too will the value of male DNA collection. In the same document, the police describe their objective this way: do not miss a single family in each village. Do not miss a single man in each family.
You could say this is to stop crime, or you could also say this is to collect even more money. China has significant financial issues. Now you couple that a data collection with the ability to reach into someone's pocket and take money out immediately because you have digital wallet, digital currency, digital banking. If you violate a rule by the government, such as a traffic law or anything else, they can literally reach into your pocket and take your money right then. On the right side of this, you're going to see traffic cameras that are recording people's faces, and just look at the number of flashes while you hear from China Insider here an explanation of why this is occurring in China and how it's now broadening just from the kind of the lower class to be touching everyone in that entire country.
The former CFO of Alibaba just sounded the alarm. Song Shou-cheng on video says the CCP will implement a new system that monitors people's finances. It's called Personal Finance and Assets Management System, which has been in development since at least 2017. Those making $270,000 or more will be on the regulator's watch list, while those making $827,000 or more will be carefully watched. The CCP will know exactly what your finance situations are and the assets that you own, like cars and houses. And this is targeting the middle and upper class in China. Why? Because the CCP has already robbed clean the lower class, and they're moving on now to make sure that the middle and upper class incomes are regulated and controlled.
So you get an idea, like the ability, that amount of data, that information, what else can it be used for? Two more quick clips, and then we're going to talk about what really matters as we look at it to us today, because this kind of stuff is coming, but we have something very pertinent and a big disruptor in 2023 that will be with generative AI. Just look at the consequences, though, quickly for an idea.
After a Rottweiler attacked a little girl in China, the local government has started a wave of dog calling again. The focus is allegedly on larger dogs and stray animals. But from the videos and pictures, it seems medium and smaller dogs are also targeted too. This woman, who is apparently 80 years old, on her knees begging the regime not to take away her dogs. This perfectly shows the mindless order execution of the CCP zombies and a merciless regime that kills animals, and going from one extreme to another with a flick of a switch. What did these pets even do to deserve this tragic end? Some of the strays think that they're actually getting a home now, but instead do not know that they're going to meet the demise that's waiting for them. Now, instead of punishing the owner of that one particular Rottweiler, they're now indiscriminately targeting all dogs in the area and across different provinces. The other breeds, like Golden Retriever or Labs, are being used as a ransom. Pet owners either have to pay a hefty fine to get their dogs back, or they're put down. That's what cops do in China, apparently. Instead of keeping citizens safe, they focus on dog policing.
It's terrible what happens to animals, but what about happens to people who don't agree with the government?
Did you know the Chinese Communist Party will send critics to mental hospitals? That's right, normal and mentally stable people are given drugs to turn them insane. The CCP uses this to silence critics and dissidents. It was especially prominent against Falun Gong practitioners who didn't convert or give up their faith. The 610 office was given extra legal jurisdictions to directly send detained Falun Gong practitioners to the mental ward. And according to Safeguard Defenders, a nonprofit researching this issue, 66% of those admitted for this political reason didn't get a psychiatric evaluation. This very act of sending them there is a form of torture, execution, and degradation. Those that end up in the hospital could spend decades, as the excuse to keep them there is to cure them.
You get an idea there. So what is happening? All this data collection is happening in China. The government utilizes it based upon their own algorithms and rules to determine your scores, and your data stems from your accounts, other people's accounts with information about you, and the rest. So you have all that information, and even website operators and private companies are providing information to them about your location, your friends, your health records, your insurance, your dating behavior, the smart home devices in your house, and the data those collect is correlated, and then they make a decision of what your score is, and it looks like this in an application. You literally have an application on your phone that you can look at to see your credit score real time. Responsible things like buying diapers or donating blood, saying nice things about the government raise that score, and if you criticize the government, hopefully not too severely because you may end up in a mental hospital, right? But if you cheat online games, anything, play games, that will lower that score. That score depends on what you're able to do with all of your life, the functionality that you have in society to live and to exist, okay? Now, where do we turn all this to? Because one of the big points in there was the reliability of stuff you've posted online or reposted. Well, what about the problem we have now? And we're thinking about our cases and the matters that we run into. Can we trust what we see? You used to think you could trust a document, and I think we know you can fake that now, right? We thought we could trust a photo, and as a photo and video forensics expert, one of my specialties, I can tell you that that's easy to fake and has been for a while. But now we can't even trust video, right? And if you ran into this picture, and I saw this the first time, I thought this was real. And I thought it was, Pope's got some style now, check him out. But you know, this is a fake picture. This is a totally fake picture, rather convincing, and this is a couple years old. What we're running into now is much more significant and much more realistic. That's an article I've included in this. I'm happy to send the slide. We're explaining how to spot fake images and videos. But these fakes are getting more complex, more realistic, and democratized. They're in applications that anyone can use. anyone would be able to use this to change faces. See the power of this now.
Today we're talking about some upcoming AI apps that don't even seem real, flawless AI. So let's look at it and then talk about some of the implications.
In the middle of freaking nowhere, and it's all my fault. 軽蔑してるよね。仕方ないよ。Y es todo por mi culpa.
So as you can see here, this analyzes faces and it is able to change facial expressions and especially the mouth, which allows for flawless translation after the fact. This software is going to adjust the facial expressions and the mouth movements to match the language. And I have to point out that there is a dark side to this, right? That means that deepfakes are going to be undistinguishable from real videos very, very soon.
Dude, this spider won't die.
Just kill him, bro. It's not that hard.
What the There's two of them. Oh my God, I'm cornered. Where the are you guys?
Dude, just build a wall. It's what you're good at.
Scary.
I couldn't help it. I had to include that. All right, this is 15 seconds. Then I'm turning this thing over. Look at this.
Second youngest son. He's suggesting it came out of nowhere. What we subsequently learned is it may have come from the former president or his legal team acting in bad faith. This is a deepfake example of what is possible with powerful computer and editing. It took around 72 hours to create this example from scratch using extremely powerful GPU. It could be improved with more computing time, but 90% of people cannot tell the difference.
Well, we're walking up on election time. This will be an interesting period, guys. We're going to see what happens now. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe.
Yep. So the question is where does all this take us? I mean, it's a terrifying dystopian future. What does it mean with lawsuits, claims, legal issues, those kind of things? The data that we're talking about, the data that relates to our claims is being collected now. Like plaintiffs' attorneys are building the systems, are building the AI systems. Morgan & Morgan is building the system that knows what you as a carrier pay on every type of case, and they're going to build it in and evaluate it. They're going to know what me as an attorney recommends on every case and where a case ends up settling. So they're going to know, Joe's bullshitting us. He says he doesn't have any more money. He paid this, this, and this on the last 10 claims. Here's the carriers he worked with. They're going to know all this. And look, we know all this, but it's intuitive because somebody calls and says, hey, what's this case worth? What should I pay on a double level fusion with a trucking accident, with no negligent entrustment issues, those kind of things. And we kind of know in our mind, we ballpark where the last one was and what the facts are and what the county was. But now all that's going to get shortcut very quickly. And the issue is there's a heavy financial incentive for the plaintiff's attorneys to do it because they can streamline and speed up their processes, and we're, as always, going to be behind on it. But all this data collection, when do we get to the point where Magna, when they're doing a jury pool research, or one of the companies we work with is doing jury pool research, can pull the names and assimilate all this data in the matter of minutes on our jurors? You know, it's scary, and the question is, and when we do it, the question is when the plaintiff's attorney does it, when they get the jury list and have better information than we do because their list is a mile long of every data point and everything they've already collected. You know, we're behind the eight ball on some of this. So you've got your clicker on your table from Magna. We've got some questions that are kind of yes or no, you know, just real quick responses. So is this picture real or fake? Is it real or fake?
So is this photo made by AI?
No.
Which one you push?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't answer that question.
Well, okay, it may not be in there yet. All right. So let's do this by show of hands on the first one. I don't think the question's tied to this one. I think we're going to get back to it. Let's do show of hands. Who thinks this one's real? All right. Real quick, why do y'all think this one isn't real? It's pretty obvious on it. You got too many wheels on the back. It just doesn't look right. What about this one? Anybody think it's real? You get a few more people. All right, this one's not either. You can look at the scale of the guys at the back of the truck. You can look at the vehicles. All right, what about this one? Who thinks it's real? All right, so that one gets more people. They're all fake. Every one of them are fake. And so to Lars's point, what you have to look at, if you look at the car behind this one, it doesn't have an emblem on the front. You know, you don't know what the maker model is, and it just kind of, it's kind of hard to differentiate. But the problem is what if somebody takes an existing photograph of a truck wreck, adds skid marks in there, you can manipulate the videos. What happens if somebody has audio of your driver and says, oh, where your driver comes up and confesses to the accident. The problem isn't necessarily what if the attorney does it. What if the claimant, before they ever get to an attorney, does it?
Which from the carrier perspective is the scariest thing, right? So how many times have we heard about the rings of fraud that are out there, from the trucking company in Louisiana to the New York labor law, fake law, accidents, the property damage claims overblown. If they're able to get in and do this with just a monthly subscription, we're gonna see this all the time, and we all know we're all sitting up here and listening to everybody talk about how stretched we are already with employees. So our people are going a million miles. Are they going to take the time to look at this photo and say, oh, there's not an emblem over there, or there's an extra wheel, or something's out, or are they just going to be like, nope, I just got to get off my desk. We're going to pay this.
One quick point to make: if you provided source material, let's provide an actual accident photo, and then you use the text-generated AI, and you're good at writing that, it will look real. These are complete whole cloth, made from nothing, using text only in a text generator to create this where I wrote it out, okay? If you give it images, you supply those, they will come out without a forensic examination. They will be indistinguishable to the human eye. You have to examine them forensically to be able to tell the difference.
And when the previous panel was talking about first-party claims and AI, here's the problem. If you don't send an independent field adjuster to the house to see what the roof damage actually looks like, or has an investigator, an adjuster that goes out there, if the insured is the one sending you pictures of what their damage is, who says it's actually a real picture?
And that happened in Florida. I was looking for the article, but I couldn't find it. It happened in Florida where they were doing drone investigation on the roofing claims, and people were adding extra dimples, and they were taking out extra shingles, and they were just making minor repairs, but it was thousands and thousands of dollars, and you multiply that by hundreds of thousands of people that are impacted by these weather events. That's billions of dollars to the insurance industry.
And if you get one roofing contractor that figures out how this works and goes to somebody's home and says, hey, I'll help you get your new roof paid for, and somebody says, well, there's not that much damage, roofing contractor says, we can fix this, and then they, figure out a way to pocket some extra money on this.
How many graphic designers do you need at that roofing company again?
Yeah. So, but what we want to do now is talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, how people are using it, whether people are using it, and whether we're all already playing catch up on this. Just for the law firms, are any of y'all's firms actively using AI? So one is going to be yes, two is going to be no. And will this pop up at the end, or is this going to? Okay.
Nice.
All right. And so I would be a yes. We'll use it a little bit from time to time, but the vast majority of us are not using it at all. Law firms, do you expect to use AI in the next year?
He's not using AI.
If you can't handle the clicker, you can't handle AI.
Love you, Mitchell.
Yeah.
If I yell, it doesn't work. That's not AI.
So this is the interesting part. We've gone from 87% aren't using it to 50% think you're going to use it in the next year. And so what's going to change on your processes and how you're instructing your employees, your associates, your paralegals that you're going to use it? Does your firm have a policy on AI yet for the law firms? So half of y'all say you're going to use it, 90% of you don't have a policy on it yet, which before you start using it, we're going to get to some questions. You better get a policy in place. Last question for the law firms. Do any of y'all think that you have people in your firm using it and you just don't know it? So are your associates using it and not telling you? Or your paralegals? There you go. So there is somebody in every firm that's using it. And just by a show of hands, how many people have gotten on Google Muse, ChatGPT, whatever it is, just raise your hand, and tried to figure out, hey, can I use this for anything productive? All right, of those that have your hands up, how many of y'all have figured out how to use it for anything productive yet? Okay, so give me an example. What?
I planned my whole trip to Spain last year on it.
Trip to Spain? Work-wise, related to what we're doing. Yeah, so Ted and I talked, I don't know if Ted's in here. a while back, and he said that he will feed his opposing expert's file, including research papers and everything else, through ChatGPT and get it to spit out an outline, on whatever subject it is that's a technical area, which I think is a great idea, and it's an area that doesn't violate any kind of HIPAA protection, confidentiality protections. So that's a good productivity kind of based thing. Does anybody else have something specific they've used it for over here? So look, there's areas we're getting to that people can. How people use it, Westlaw and Lexis both have services that have come out, and my partner Megan's not in here, but she's been hounding me to meet with the Lexis person on what theirs is, because she wanted them all to come, the person to come meet with the associates. I was like, let's figure out what the system can do before we let the associates run with it. To Ted's and Jen's point, document review and discovery, predictive analysis, where it does a great job, compare these two documents. So contract review, where it says what's the difference between these two, ChatGPT can do in 2 seconds what it takes you 3 hours to do. Legal case management, chatbots, there's tons of websites you go to. It says, hey, can I help you? What's your injury? Those kind of things. Sentiment analysis, so what jurors are going to think about these things, data security, virtual assistants, ADR. We had a client a long time ago that had a cyber mediation process where instead of using mediation, you would plug numbers into a system, and then the system would come back and generate things and ask you for a new number. It was called CyberSettle or something along those lines, and everybody really did not trust it, especially the older folks in our firm. So some of this stuff's been around there. It's just going to get better and more polished. Insurance carriers.
Yeah, so a lot of insurance carriers have leaned in. Somebody was up on the panel from Chubb. Their CEO came out and said that they're going to be heavily investing in AI and using it and trying to figure out a way. I work for the Hartford. We're a large work comp carrier. I will tell you that our company uses it a lot in work comp. So I see it a lot in flow business, where it's a lot of claims, high frequency, low severity types of claims. I haven't seen it in the more complex claims like the stuff I'm dealing with, New York labor law, massive trucking cases, massive job site accidents, construction defect, things where it takes multiple parties, multiple damages or high damages and low liability type of cases. But somebody was talking about Lemonade and Lemonade kicking out a property. First party property is big into AI. What's the problem? So I was on a panel a long time ago here talking about not having anybody coming up through the ranks. So the biggest problem I see from the AI, the carriers using AI, is it takes away those low-level claims. So we are going to see another gap in talent because they're not getting those claims that they can handle because it's going to be done by AI for multiple reasons. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's quicker, and honestly, we can't get the talent in now. How do we replace it? But it also, from a law firm perspective, I would imagine that's going to be the same fear. Is if somebody's writing a brief for you, and it's a minor brief, how are you going to learn? It's going to take away the ability to have training capabilities of getting those lower level adjusters up to our deal. Now, I'll tell you, contracts, love it. Medical records, love it. Like all the tedious things that we make the adjusters do now, if I can get them to spit out a report and it's accurate, I'm still in the trust but verify stage when it comes to AI. I like it. I think it's there, but you need to go back through with a fine-tooth comb to figure it out because we're not quite there yet. But as somebody in my company, I can't take credit for it, but what he said is this is the fastest we've ever seen technology, but it's the slowest it's ever going to be. So think about that for a minute. Like it's coming quick. So we got to be prepared for it. I don't trust it yet, but I am somebody who believes in technology. I listen to Lars all the time. I hear the shit that he talks about and it scares the living daylights out of me. But it's also the future. So yeah, and carriers are definitely leaning into AI, especially for those low-level claims.
I think it's a significant point to think about the development of expertise, right? You got to get the reps in. It takes time doing the work. And one of the challenges we're going to face, I really believe in this across the board, is that humans, especially people who have expertise in the area, are really good at making challenging decisions on new stuff with limited information. Right? That's what we're good at. These AI cannot do that. They have to build what they believe to be that predictive from a huge body of massive amounts of knowledge Whereas a human who is an expert can take a very limited amount of information and give a very educated guess, right? A good predictor on what could occur or these outcomes and dealing with humans in the proper way and the rest. AI won't do that. So we've got that whole chain of growing an expert, growing expertise that is going to be severely challenged by AI because it's going to be a faster and more efficient way to do it and economical.
Yep. So carriers and TPAs, is your company using AI right now? So y'all, this tells us, claim side, y'all are using a lot more than we are on the attorney side. Do you expect to be using AI in the next year for the carriers and TPAs only? So everybody sees the trend, and the question is what are we doing about it? Does your company have a policy on AI? So regardless of whether you're using it or not, does the company say, yes or no, we're supposed to be using this? So carriers, again, much better than law firms are about having a policy in place.
But the 56% still scares the shit out of me.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, if you don't have a policy on AI and what you're allowed to do and not do, that's, I mean, I'm not going to be doomsday, but that's bad news. You should be talking to somebody to get some policies in play on the carrier side.
Get you a chat assistant to answer all your emails.
Yes. So, and experts and engineers, y'all probably use AI much more and much more robustly than anybody else has.
Yeah, in the digital forensic space, we're utilizing AI as more of a test case to see what it does, can and can't do. As far as what we actually deal with from an expertise perspective in analyzing that evidence, AI can't do that because at least in digital forensics, it's unlike some of the other disciplines where what we're examining is moving target, right? DNA doesn't change, so the medium may change to examine it, but the core thing you're looking at doesn't. With technology, we're keeping pace, so it's never, AI doesn't have the answers to anything that our expertise do and our experts do now. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. I know a lot of other experts and disciplines are using it though.
Yeah. Yep.
I've got a question.
Sure.
All right, so with every new technology, there's going to be an expert who's going to use that technology. What about experts who talk about what AI can and cannot do? Do we see, is there anybody I can call and say, look, I've got this expert report from Finance Council. They're going to testify to their use of AI, or I assume they used AI to some extent.
Yeah, I actually have a few cases in the criminal side of the work that I do right now involving that, both in facial recognition, flock cameras, and the rest, where AI is used mostly to track people or to use it to determine facial recognition and place people at certain locations. So yes, that's already happening. So I think that's a natural evolution in digital forensics. That will be a sub-discipline like computer, cell phone location. You'll have expertise in artificial intelligence and how it works. So we do have to know how that is the case now, if that makes sense. I hope I answered that question.
It does, but I guess my question is, so I know this is out there, you know, in the ether. I know it's increasingly being used. I don't know, well, I know for a fact that the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure are not keeping up because they never do. And I'm going to need somebody to be able to, can you tell me whether or not this report used AI?
Excellent question. So that's a real challenge, right? So when we have forensic tools that crack passcodes on phones, suck all the data off and the rest, all that cool stuff, they have legal books where they've been used in cases and the rest, right? So we can reference that. They have industry standards, best practices. When we're talking about AI with these companies, since it has become private, there's no transparency in how it works. So in order for a forensic examiner to verify, are these results good? We can't test it. We have to go by what's publicly available to everybody. So I think you're going to have to get internal engineers and representatives from those companies who can explain that, to then talk to an expert and then deal with it from there in. That's the same thing we've had to do in many times with Google for geolocation and other things like that, because it's proprietary data that's there. So that's going to be a real challenge. It's going to be a challenge.
My first reaction to that is, if you can't tell me the reliability of the data you use, then it should be excluded.
That's a foundational principle in forensics, yes, absolutely.
And that's
I'd be able
I
to
mean,
verify.
I haven't dealt with it yet, but I see that coming down the pipeline, and I'm going to need somebody to back me up, because, you know, I'm going to need an expert to say that.
Yep.
That's a great point.
So talking about the plaintiff's bar real quick, what are they using AI for? So intake, predictive modeling, medical summaries like we all are, evaluation. Pond Lahaki's building their own system, Morgan & Morgan's building their own system. But it's like I said earlier, basically they're taking all the data points that we're giving them on negotiations, on because those negotiations are getting logged into the computer as well. Every time I send Morgan & Morgan an email that says I'll respond to your offer at X, it's all getting charted. I have thought about that. We have not crossed that bridge. So our question is are we putting something in our confidentiality that says you can't even record our negotiations in your AI in your computer? Which, look, I've been to mediations with plaintiffs' attorneys where they'll play a day in the life video and it'll start out with, this is all confidential. If you don't agree with it, you need to get up and leave and can't watch the rest of this video and can't be here. So, you know, same question is, do we need to be putting our emails to them or our letters to them, hey, the terms of this are confidential, we don't want it showing up, being tracked, going into your systems or anything like that. And
But would that prevent them from doing something on their own internal their own internal database?
Right, and that's
doesn't go out to the public. So how would you A, how would you know? B, how could you prove it? And C, can you even do that on a confidential? It won't go to the public, but it's their own private information and their own private data that they're collecting.
Right.
So I don't know if it would do any good. I mean, it's a great thought process, and that's what we have to do. And you know, one of the things that from the other side, we're talking about the other side, and they collect all the data. I've had a couple of people approach us and say, hey, we've got all of this stuff. We know the judge and how many times he rules on MSJs and how long it takes and what his rulings are. And from this plaintiff firm, we know how much they settle for and all that. And the data was dirty. Like it did not hold out. On the plaintiff side, their data is not dirty. They are spot on. They know exactly what to do. They know when the buttons are pushed. And just to rewind a little bit back, so from our company on the work comp side, we know when to make an offer. We know how long they should be treating. We know when they should go back to work. We know all of this stuff because we have so much data on it. So do they. They know exactly when to push the buttons. They know exactly when to leverage the most stuff. And somebody mentioned something about being data entry people. I think you mentioned that earlier about, you know, the adjusters are data entry. The unfortunate side effect is this is why. Like we're trying to combat somebody who has a massive amount of data and we're trying to get the data ourselves. So the only way for us to get the data ourselves is to input it and then try to cobble the information together from the carrier perspective to come up with some of these predictive modelings. And we are terrible at it and they are great at it.
And once you can figure out the AI to collect the data automatically, that's where it changes completely. Because if somebody's got to sit down and go to a report and type in a number and enter it for the record, the moves that are made and everything else, that's when it's a pain and it uses up half your day to go back and just track the information you've done. But once this becomes automatic and once they break through on that side of things, then, you know, they have bots just checking their data every day and everything in their system saying, hey, here's the tangential piece of information I need to put out and put in this database.
And there's just another way like that is being used, and it's a little disconnected from this, but just think about this, okay? I'm familiar with a plaintiff firm that every one of their plaintiffs they bring on, they get an Oura ring for. An Oura ring tracks your sleep, tracks your movement, all the stuff like that, right? So they gather all that biometric data about your activity that they can say, you know, they got hurt in this particular instance in whatever way, look at how bad their sleep is, right? And without even any previous data earlier, but then they're trying to weaponize that information in mediations or whatever else.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that a lot of fundamentally the data, there's many errors in the data.
Oh yeah.
When you go in, that isn't changing. Like with all the technology and all the direct input, and all the improvements to the system, the fundamental data, when you go into particular areas of this large database, you find that the reports are wrong, that the injury descriptions are wrong, the medical outcomes are wrong. And so when you're trying to formulate the outcomes, if you're using that data, going back to what earlier was said about experts using judgment,
Yep.
they tune that data out because they know that fundamentally it doesn't drive their experience.
So if the gray hair doesn't indicate it, this comment will. Who remembers the Colossus days? Right, when you would put something in and it would spit something out. Remember what happened with Colossus? Dirty data in, dirty data out. It failed because of that. So yeah, if you don't put in the data correctly, you get bad data out. And that's what honestly, I think that's where AI can help us. If we get some AI in there, like Joe was saying, that can comb through and get the information and come up with clean data, that will help us out more than anything else on the industry side.
And think of how far AI has come in 2 years and where we are compared to what we thought it was going to be. And so, another 2-3 years, all this is going to be cleaned up. And I've been practicing 20 years. I had a partner when I started who refused to have email. We didn't even have a license for him to have access to our WorldDoc system. Within 10 years, all his clients were gone, because he said, oh, I've been practicing 40 years or 30 years. I don't want to do this. It's one of these things that it's almost Navy SEAL-esque, that just get comfortable being uncomfortable. The only constants change, those kind of things. And it's only going to accelerate. And if you're stuck in whatever year you're in and you aren't going to move along, and at least, I'm not saying embrace it, but at least allow for the idea it's there and that you need to learn to work with it and around it, it's going to catch up and overcome and get you. For carriers, do you have a policy on your lawyers using AI? So a lot of y'all have policies internally. Barely anybody has policies external. Who's, not to out you, but if anybody said yes, was there a process that you had to go through, that you wrote a policy, or is it a long written policy? I mean, nobody wants to fess up.
There's only one person out there that said yes.
Yeah, I think it's, well, we'll have that conversation later. Now, you have the policy, but do you allow your firms to use AI regardless of whether you have a policy? So, same thing. Most of y'all allow it, but there's not a policy for it. Same issue with law firms. You're allowing it, or you know what's going on, but there's no policy for it. And we're going to get here's why this is an issue. The ABA, the model codes and professional conducts and everything else that we have, has not discussed the ethics of using AI yet. If you go look at like Supreme Court decisions, the time it takes for a technological issue to wind its way to the Supreme Court is mind-boggling. So they had a case probably 3, maybe 4 years ago that talked about a service that was bouncing TV broadcasts off an internet site. And so basically people were stealing streaming shows. And when you read the opinion that the Supreme Court wrote, you have a bunch of octogenarians that are trying to write an opinion on the intellectual property rights of a technology that's existed that they've never seen, and it just doesn't work well. And so, look, we're not going to get anything specific on the ethics of using AI for probably another couple of years, because whatever is happening now that an attorney's screwing up, other than the story in New York where AI made up the case law, it's going to take a little while for all this to get through.
Hey Joe, we got a question.
Yep.
Is anyone in the room aware of...
Thank you, Jim. The use of AI is really interesting for all of us, but is anyone aware of a malpractice scenario because of AI use by counsel? You don't have to out anybody, but if that has been an issue for anyone, I would be curious about that.
What's that, George?
Say that again, George?
Malpractice claim, no, but sanctions from a court, yes.
Okay.
No.
So, talking about ethics, and that's the question, it's coming, and I've seen stuff from some plaintiff's attorneys, especially younger plaintiff's attorneys, clearly done by AI. You know, if you get a pleading or a complaint and read it, you're like, this doesn't read like anything I've ever read before.
Texas has implemented local rules dealing with this.
Good.
That's what you need, right?
Yeah.
So did anybody watch the Super Bowl? Better we did. The Despicable Me commercial with the AI, and it was all distorted. And to Joe's point, right now it's easy to spot. You know, the pictures are a little bit harder, but written word, it's pretty easy to spot. You can tell when it's been generated by AI. But that's going to change.
Yeah, there's GPTs already where you take that kind of terrible writing by ChatGPT, because you can read it and tell it, and you put it into like Humanizer Pro that you can pay for. That humanizes it, makes it much more legible. So I can't imagine there'll be like Lawyerize Pro at some point that'll do the same thing.
Yeah. So, but from an ethics standpoint, if you're using AI, from an ethical standpoint, you have to oversee any of the work being done. So it's all your responsibility. Competence, keeping it confidential, supervised, transparent, due diligence, exactly what the ethics rules say. You have to make sure that that's taken care of. So the hardest part when I've tried to use AI to write a motion, to write a brief, to write the skeleton outline of something I need to start with, because I'll go into ChatGPT and I'll say, hey, write a motion to compel for me based on the plaintiff's failure to respond to discovery. Easy project. You know, it'll spit out 10 paragraphs that'll say their responses are overdue, we've talked, you know, they hadn't been given back. Is it faster than if I just tell my secretary, hey, go pull out this motion that we filed in this other case, and then I'm going to update it, you know, put it on the right heading, and then I'll edit it. You know, I don't know if it's faster yet. When you go to it, and we tested it out, and I said, give me a brief on Alabama law about what a medical expert has to have to be able to testify to criticize another medical expert. And surprisingly, it spit out a 5-page brief that was largely correct. The problem is, it doesn't give you any cites, it doesn't give, the information it gives you may be wrong, may use wrong terminology. And the question is it gets back to of bad data coming in, bad data going out. So where is it pulling all this case law from? What is it? Yeah, different words. What's it using to amalgamate all this information? Lexis and Westlaw are both cordoned off, right? So it can't get to Lexis and Westlaw, but it goes to whatever's out there. And it may be, with all the blog posts that are written on law firm websites now, it may be pulling from other AI that's written for lawyers about what the law is. And so you never know what the source material is. So look, if you're getting it to do a heavy project, you have to sit down and spend a lot of time reading through every word it wrote, pretending like it's a baby associate that doesn't know anything about the area of law you're starting on, and reading everything they write is basically where it is. So is it faster right now? I don't know. Will it get there? Yes. For your associates, they don't realize the things that, the potential pitfalls of what they're doing. And I'll tell you a lot of times, if I ask an associate to do something, it's because I think they can handle it. So, you know, if somebody's been with me 2 or 3 years and has done something correct before, and I hand them a project and say, look, take this motion, you know, you've done it before, just go file it, make sure it's done on time. So there's stuff at some point, once you trust somebody, you don't read as much anymore, right? Y'all do it in the insurance world too. But the question is your associate doing something and not telling you with AI and just doesn't know what they don't know? You know, that's part of the problem of practicing law is when you don't know what you don't know, when you don't know where the pitfalls are, we don't know where the problems are, and you step right off into a hole without knowing it, what is AI going to do? Because AI definitely doesn't know what those things are.
So I'm going to tell you guys a personal scary story. My son basically graduated college by doing everything online with bots. You can type in any question and it'll answer that question and it'll give you a prompt. And then they actually have another, like you were saying, you have another site that you put it in and it'll say this was plagiarized 10 times. We need to reword it just this way and it'll pass the plagiarism test. So I know this for a fact. Like it's out there. It's gonna happen. And that's what you're gonna have with the associates coming up, because that's what they did through college. Like that's a way to do it. Now look, I will tell you something else. It's actually kind of cool. Like it's actually kind of cool that the technology is out there that exists, that people are able to do this. He knows how to do it. He knows what the pitfalls are. He knows the workarounds. So I'm always a looking forward guy, right? Like I know I don't sound it when I talk about claims, but I always am looking forward to the future. I think that their ability to do this and their ability to master it is going to be great for the future. It's actually going to be a good thing. We're not there yet. It's still scary. It's still, is it going to take my job? It's still getting bad data. But eventually, the ability to have somebody be able to do this and do it clean and know how to do it, that's going to be great for everybody all the way around.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but George mentioned a federal district. It's the Northern District of Texas, and it's a specific judge, Judge Brantley Starr. He has now a mandatory certification regarding generative artificial intelligence, and you have to sign a certification with any filing that no portion of any filing will be drafted by generative artificial intelligence, or that any language drafted by generative artificial intelligence will be checked for accuracy using print reporters, I have no idea what that is, or traditional legal databases by a human being.
Yeah, that sounds
So-
like that sounds like a judge that's up there saying, "Get off my lawn." I mean, frankly, yes, there has to be regulation around it, and yes, there has to be some compliance, and there has to be some oversight and things like that. But to go to that extreme and to go that far, that's just not where the future is going. Like, and I get it. Like, I understand. Right now, I would agree with something like that because it's not there yet. 5 years from now, we're gonna be there.
Considering the number of octogenarians that sit on the federal bench, I said considering the number of octogenarians that sit on the federal bench, we might be dealing with rules like this for some time to come.
That's a fair assessment.
And to Steve's point, my son is younger. I have an 8th grader. And if you think they aren't learning ChatGPT now, I mean, the younger kids, you think about how quick they adopt technology. It's the new cool thing. You don't have to get off my lawn aspect. They want to see, can I push the limits of it? And so we have my son's phone pretty locked down on what he can get to and can't, but on their school computers even, they can get to some versions of ChatGPT and programs. And so, I keep an eye out for what's being used and not used, but if I get on his text chain with his football team, I'll go through, read his text. Somebody's missing homework, somebody hadn't done something, and one of the kids just says, get on ChatGPT and do it. It's every stinking night that somebody's saying that to another kid. They didn't read chapter 6 in the Iliad and have to have a 3-paragraph summary of what it is. Get on ChatGPT and do it. And
we all had Cliff Notes.
We did have Cliff Notes. Yeah, we had Cliff Notes. So but it's they're doing their homework in 10 seconds, and I just don't know where it goes. So. Here is the biggest problem I have with using AI in my office, and the thing that we kind of go round and round about, because I'm in charge of AI, I'm in charge of IT, I'm in charge of all the confidentiality, protection of materials. Breaches are huge, they're giant problems if somebody gets into your file system, your email, whatever it is. Confidentiality. The AI systems that are out there right now are OpenAI, and Mitchell and I had a conversation about this. I don't know if Mitchell's in here. We had a conversation about this yesterday, and literally while we were talking, a friend sent me a tweet that said, NVIDIA has now introduced a closed AI system that runs on your computer. What's the difference between those two? OpenAI, you're sending stuff out to the internet, it's amalgamating everything there, which means everything you send to it is getting put in the pile. So if you put medical records, reports, anything in that, if you give it access to your email system, which is a big problem, if you give AI access to your email system, you have breached confidentiality, because now an outside source and database can comb through your entire email. Anything you send out to an open AI is getting collected. It's getting added to the pool of what people are going to use. Closed AI is important because hypothetically, theoretically, it's running on software on your system, in your computer, in your file system, that's only pulling from your files to be able to do things. The question I have is, well, how do you update that system? How is it getting better? Clearly, there's going to be updates. It's going to be talking to each other. Do you trust that some system that was just created that nobody really knows how it works isn't taking data back out as well? And I'm sure you're agreeing to a license agreement that says you can collect all data, that we're not responsible for it. We have an arbitration agreement, so on and so forth. And to the point of data collection, when we're talking about China, how many people have TikTok? Not many in here. How many people's kids have TikTok on their phone? All of your data is in there.
So who did the facial recognition where it turned you old? Remember that during the pandemic? Everybody was downloading it. Did anybody read the agreement?
Russia. Yeah.
It was Russia. Your data and your facial recognition is theirs forever.
Everything that comes through a cell phone, the keystrokes, the listening, the monitoring, is getting logged somewhere. So I got a buddy who works with Verizon that does ad sales, does mobile ad sales for them. So he's the guy who determines he sells to the guys that buy the pop-up space that determine what ads you're going to get based on what you say, do, search for, or what your phone or Amazon hears you doing all those things.
And if you want to have a really interesting conversation, get a couple of cocktails in him and talk about the black market and that data that's being sold underneath.
Yeah. All of this data is being collected. And we think, oh, we're not China. It's all being collected. The difference is it's going to corporations and businesses, not to governments. And we have due process. They're not going to find us. Government has subpoena power. It's all out there for whoever's going to get it. And so for the idea of you think, oh, nobody knows that much about me. If you've ever gone into or out of a country and had a facial scan, everybody knows everything about you. And they can track it down very quickly.
If you think it's not happening in the United States, all you had to look is the issue of Google geofence warrants, where Google can literally draw a circle on a map and see every phone that is either an Android phone or a Apple phone using a Google application like Gmail or Google Maps. They can literally see it, and they can track your movement historically from all these places that you've been. There's cases on it. There's a criminal case we're working on, and with the NACDL with a couple of my experts in dealing with that issue on Fourth Amendment issues. But yes, the amount of data collection is. And
that was one of the big things on ChatGPT. I don't know if you guys saw where somebody would write, "Where am I at?" And ChatGPT would say, "Well, I can't tell you where you're at. That's against our policy." And then they said, "Where's the closest McDonald's?" They said, "Oh, there's one 2 blocks away."
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because ChatGPT, you can find the areas where it won't work, because I've asked it to put together a list of all jury verdicts that are listed in newspapers or anything in the state of Alabama for the last 2 years to try to update some of the databases we have our associates keep. And it'll say, "I'm sorry, I don't have that information. You should probably connect to legal services," kind of thing. So it's got windows where it'll say, "No, I'm not going to do that," or I only keep information up to X in our database. So there's places where it will and it won't. And I promise Mitchell we try to catch up. So confidentiality, no, anything you put into a ChatGPT, an AI source, whatever it is getting collected. So you can't do medical records. It's a HIPAA violation. You can't do any client work product. You can't give it access to your file system, and you can't give it access to your email. So until we find a good closed system that's out there, and they're being built. Ethics, ABI, we're going to check off everybody's ethics box on the CLE requirement right here. So do you have a duty to tell your client if you use AI? There's an ABA model rule out there that says we have to explain a matter to the extent reasonable necessary to permit the client to make informed decisions regarding their representation. So according to some folks that have written articles about it, that's kind of a catch-all, that if you're using AI, you need to be telling your client you're using AI. And the other question is if you're billing your client the normal rate for what you'd write a brief and it took AI 35 seconds to do it, you got some other ethics issues there on top of it. There's an article out there that's actually kind of interesting of, do ethics laws require lawyers to use AI? So that same question, if you're taking 30 seconds to write a brief that would normally take you 8 hours to write, do you have an obligation to the client, to the carrier, to do that? Do you have an obligation to provide a reasonable service for a fee that would be accepted, among the community? At what point are we required to use AI? And that's the fee question there. At what point do you owe it to the client? So quickly, does anybody have any questions, discussions? We can literally sit and talk about this topic all day, and I don't think get to any kind of answer. But I think the big picture takeaways is change is coming, or change is here. Change is coming faster. You need policies in place, law firms, carriers on what you're going to do, what you're going to allow. Don't put your head in the sand. Talk to your associates about it. Make sure they aren't using it for things they shouldn't be using it for. Make sure your client data is protected. Make sure you're not having any HIPAA violations. Just be uber careful about what you're granting access to on any AI system you're using.
Yeah. And I would also say embrace the change. It's actually going to be a good thing. I promise.
So, anybody? Any questions? All right, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.